Welcome to the Strength Studio Lab. I'm Jen, and I'm so delighted to be with you and welcome you to this space today. Today's episode is actually one I've been wanting to record for some time because it gets at something that I see all the time in my work. And so I'm sure a lot of you run into this as well. You know the drill. We've talked about this before. You go through the workshop, and after it ends, people might talk a little bit about their strengths, maybe every now and again, but that's it. The strengths actually ended up living in the workshop and not coming back into the organization. It gets left behind and not fully integrated, which then often leads to that flavor of the month feeling, right? So it's not because strengths don't work. It's because the workshop was treated as a destination, when really that's just our starting line. If strengths are treated like an event, they expire. If they are integrated as a language and as a framework, that's where they scale. And the collective potential of that is truly, truly unmatched. So today I want to talk about how do we make strengths stick? Not as a program that you roll out and you check it off the list, but as something that truly gets woven into the entire fabric of how the organization operates. I'm going to walk you through what I call my integration checklist. It's essentially about 10 key areas across the organization where strengths could and should be integrated. From the moment someone walks in the door, all the way through how you plan, how you develop people, how you celebrate wins, and the often forgotten space, how you show up to the outside world. Now, I like to give you a handout, so I have put it for you in a checklist. You can download it on my website, www.strengthstudio.com, navigate to the lab tab, and you should be able to find the handout available there. As you know, these are quick podcasts, so I want to dive in, but just note, this is not all-encompassing, but it's a good place for you to start, and it's a way for me to give you as much insight as possible within our 15 to 20 minutes together. So let's start at the top. Literally start at the top, because leadership is truly critical for strengths integration. You've probably heard it a million times, but it's absolutely critical to have that buy-in at the top. Strengths needs to be adopted and modeled by the leadership for it to truly find roots in the organization. I am a very big believer in both the top-down, bottom-up approach, but I have seen companies where if it only comes from the bottom up, the leader sometimes won't even take the assessment. This will create a major roadblock down the road for full integration of strengths into your workplace. So here's the truth. If the leaders in your organization aren't talking about their own strengths, sharing their dominant themes, modeling the language, making it part of how they communicate, it may never come part of the entire organizational culture. Culture can flow downhill because people watch what leaders do. People pay attention, and then they use it as their model or as their excuse. So if you want to truly infuse strengths into your organization, this is not just about having leaders take the assessment. It's about having them actually use it, referencing their themes in conversation, being transparent about how they're wired, and giving others permission to do the same. They value the strengths of the people around them, and they respect the difference that people bring, even when those strengths are different from their own and their approaches. When a CEO says in an all-hands meeting, my futuristic and strategic themes are what drive how I think about where we're going, that's a signal. It tells everyone, we talk about strengths here. Ideally, strengths also will live in your mission, your vision, your values, not just as jargon, but really as that commitment to having a strengths-based workplace, a strengths-based mindset. When we integrate it into our values, it also helps us attract and retain individuals who are bringing that similar strengths mindset and thinking. So that brings me to onboarding. That is the next spot on our checklist. This is one of those that is absolutely near and dear to my heart because it is truly a massive opportunity that so many organizations fumble. And I start here because I truly have a non-negotiable guardrail that you do not use strengths in hiring. I actually don't think you should use any assessment in hiring as it opens the door for bias and missed opportunities. I am okay with you integrating the mindset into your position profiles and how you advertise, but do not give the assessment until the new hire is officially on board. That way, you make it part of effective onboarding and you make it meaningful for the individual. We all know that the first few days and weeks in a new role, that's when individuals are typically the most open, the most attentive, the most eager to understand, how things work around here. It's truly a precious opportunity. And it is the perfect moment to introduce strengths. Done right, onboarding with strengths looks like this. New hire comes in, they take the assessment in their first week. Then, and this is critical, they don't just get a report. They get context, they get framing, they get training. Someone walks them through what their results mean, why the organization uses this, and how it connects to how people actually work together here. Ideally, all new hires would get trained together, so it starts building a cohort, it starts building connections, and people can feel part of the community from early on. But this is the watch point. It truly has to be utilized in the organization. New hires need to be added to the team strengths grid, and there actually needs to be conversations where they get to learn about their new teammates' strengths, where they get to share their own, and then they're creating those connections. You do not want the alternative, which is essentially onboarding gone wrong. And I've seen it more times than I can count. Someone hands a new employee an assessment code, tells them to take it, no context, no follow through. The person spends 3 months thinking strengths is just this quirky HR thing that no one actually takes seriously. I've even seen it where other employees go, oh no, we don't actually use that around here. So this is my word of caution. Don't let that be your organization. Leverage it in onboarding, but don't let it die there. Let it continue on. Leverage it in your teams. Which takes us to the next section of the checklist when we're thinking about teams and operations. Once people are in the door and they're oriented, that next question is, how does strengths actually show up in the day-to-day? Let's start with team building first. And I'm not talking about the once-a-year retreats. I mean the routine, intentional moments where the team's using that strengths lens, weekly huddles, quarterly check-ins, team conversations, even brief moments in regular meetings. One of my favorite things to see with a strengths-based team is when they can actually name one another's strengths, not just their own. When someone can be in a conversation or a meeting or working on a project and say, I see your empathy showing up right now, and it's actually just what we need. Or when someone says, hey, let's pause. We need your analytical perspective to balance our strategic lens. That's when you know the strengths-based culture is alive, the peer-to-peer strength spotting. And it actually changes the whole dynamic of how a team sees each other. This is where that team grid becomes an invaluable resource. When the team is aware of their collective strength and their watch points, and they can call on what each individual can bring and contribute to the moment. So I encourage you, keep that strengths grid alive and updated. When someone new joins, add them. When roles shift, revisit it. When someone departs, remove them. It should be a living document, not a snapshot from 2 years ago when you took your assessments or went through your first strengths training. And I would say for teams who have done the balconies and basements exercise, keep that fresh. Refresh them periodically. Teams should talk about their statements by asking things like, are we leaning into our balconies and pairing up for collective success? Or are we tripping over our basements and getting in each other's way? One of the things that I love is when teams will do, paired up coffee chats so that they can learn about one another. They can talk through, how do we actively work together? Where are some friction points? How do we manage those with each other? It helps us have healthier conversations and be able to deliver feedback rather than just having friction that might fester. And so that's one of those ways that you can create a strong team. Create the opportunities to connect, to learn, encourage those individuals to assume good intent, know their colleagues' contribution points, be willing to hear and listen to different perspectives, and be open and receptive to the different thoughts and lenses that others bring. It can truly be so powerful for how teams work together. One more quick thing I want to encourage for teams for using this in the everyday is when you're considering meetings and projects, take it from just being an assessment to truly being that tool for how you work. As you know, Strengths is organized in taking all of those 34 themes and categorizing them into the 4 domains: executing, influencing, relationship building, strategic thinking. So when you have a big project or initiative on the table, consider the domains as you approach the work. Think about things like, all right, who's dominant in executing? Those people who follow through, make things happen, the ones that are going to help us get this done. Think about who is dominant in the strategic thinking, who can absorb the information, look at the data, see around the corner, ask those great what if questions. Think about who are the relationship builders, who's going to help keep the team connected, manage the human side of the work. And I will tell you, my achiever always appreciates these individuals who can help me slow my pace and ensure that the team doesn't build out. I swear my achiever fuels itself, so I need my relationship building partners to help me slow my roll. And then think about our influencers. Who are the ones that are going to help us tell this story, advocate, advance the work externally so that it doesn't just live on our spreadsheets or in our meeting rooms? So when we assign roles deliberately based on domains, that isn't just smart, it's energizing. People are doing the parts of the work that come most naturally to them. And that is where you get discretionary effort. And remember, those domains also help us watch out for groupthink. If your team naturally skews to strategic thinking and no one is naturally in that executing place, you need to name the gap out loud and build that intentional support, because it's that strengths awareness that helps us see the blind spots before they become problems. And what an opportunity to highlight a contribution of someone who can actually help the team think outside of their dominant lens. And I want to share this little quick story with you because it just recently happened in a session. Someone comes up to me and she says, Jen, at the start of this, I was so embarrassed because I did not fit in with the team by being all influencing while everyone else is so dominant in executing. But now I can see where I add value and the team understands the value of my different thinking. That is the beauty of strengths in action. When we can see where we contribute and the team can value and respect each member for that unique lens that they bring. That is where this stuff gets really, really good. So I could talk about the team aspect and the operational aspect all day, but let's keep going because we got a huge one up next: development and coaching. This one I get really excited about because it is where strengths integration goes the deepest and it creates the most lasting impact. So let me start by saying this. I truly believe that self-awareness is the baseline for all development. Let me say that again. Self-awareness is the baseline for all development. You cannot grow intentionally if you do not understand how you are wired. The fail point that I see consistently is that trainers are brought in to teach new tools for some of these general competencies like communication, teamwork, collaboration, navigating change, and they give great steps. They're even great trainers, but the training doesn't land because people don't actually understand how they show up in those areas and how they can use their strengths as tools to meet the desired outcomes of those particular competencies. So for example, when navigating change, we need to understand our lens around change. Someone with adaptability is likely going to navigate change very differently than someone with discipline or deliberative. CliftonStrengths gives people that foundation, and honestly, I believe development programs should be built upon it. So you're probably thinking, okay, but what does this look like in practice? It doesn't mean doing everything. It means create a signature development program that has strengths woven throughout it, not bolted on as a module, but embedded in its core. It means identifying the competencies that matter to your organization. Things like communication, collaboration, leadership, problem solving, navigating uncertainty. And don't pick 100 things, pick 5 to 7 things that really matter. And then help employees uncover how their specific themes are already pointing them toward those competencies. For example, when someone with high connectedness understands that they have a natural ability to see links between people and ideas, that can help them be a great collaborator. That's a light bulb moment for them. People stop trying to become someone else and they start aiming what they have. And I will say this as well. Development is for everyone, every role, every level, not just leaders, not just high potentials, everyone. Everyone in the organization should know their strengths, know the core competencies, and actively be working to aim their strengths as tools. Now, I separated out managers because managers are a key piece. I want to put the spotlight on them for a moment because they are a crucial variable in whether a strengths-based culture actually takes hold. And you've probably heard this, but Gallup research has found that managers account for 70% of the variance in employee engagement. That means this is a massive opportunity to support and strengthen managers as a way to develop and shape the entire organization. And I will tell you, I have found middle management in particular to be one of the most difficult roles in the organization. So it's imperative that managers are equipped so that they're effective, but also so that they feel fueled and don't burn out. A manager who knows how to coach through strengths, who can see what's working, who can name it and develop it, is a multiplier. A manager who doesn't have that fluency, no matter how well-intentioned, will inadvertently push people toward conformity rather than contribution. So I encourage you, invest in your people managers, make strengths coaching a core part of how they lead, train them to lead through a strengths-based lens, understand how to set clear expectations, coach, motivate, and create an environment of teamwork, effective decisions, and shared accountability. And because I said accountability, I'll just note, weave strengths into your performance review process and development conversations, not as an add-on, but make it a genuine lens. People should be having these conversations. We should be asking questions like, how did your strengths show up this quarter? Where did you aim them well? Where do you want to grow your aim? Where do you have areas to manage or stretch? How can you leverage your strengths to do that? So I could talk about all of these topics all day long, but I got to keep us on track here. And so I'm keeping each of these sections brief. The next one is critically important, and I see this one get missed so often. It's the strategy, thinking about strategic planning, goal setting, metrics. Strengths isn't just a people tool. It's truly a strategy lever. When you're doing your annual planning, look at your team's collective strengths profile. What does the organization do brilliantly? What does the team do brilliantly? Where does your natural energy and talent point towards certain kinds of work, certain kinds of projects? Where can we pair up for collective success on key goals? Where are there gaps that you need to supplement or partner around? And this is the biggest one that I see forgotten time and time again. Where do we need to share, communicate, and advocate around our plan and our goals so that this external world is aligning and moving forward with us? You don't want your strategic plan or your goals to just sit and live on a shelf. You want it to be alive and moving with the organization. And when it comes to goals, they land so much better when people can see their own strengths in them. When an employee looks at a team goal and thinks, oh, you know what? I know exactly how my achiever or my responsibility are going to show up here. They're not just assigned to a goal, they're invested in it. And I want to hit on metrics briefly because it's important that we use data. Don't leave things to guesswork. Monitor and track your objectives and goals. And I hope you're going to have strengths-based goals in there, people development goals in there. You'll notice in the matrix, in the team section, I actually notate a pulse check. Build in a survey mechanism to make sure that you have strengths alignment, what you're actually intended, and you're actually holding to the practice. Plans have a way of drifting. Data keeps us honest and aligned, and it gives us those insights that we need to make the right tweaks. So I know that topic probably left you with more questions and answers on strategies, goals, and metrics, but the takeaway is this. Think about strengths through the lens of everything you do, whether it's onboarding or strategy. Always practice the pause and think about, okay, how can I integrate strengths here? And I have two more for you. So let's talk recognition. This is so important. And I've heard so many times people say, oh, I don't need recognition. But people do. We just need to find out what kind of recognition is valuable to the individual. And where I sit, when I think about recognition, This is the real difference between telling somebody, hey, good job on that presentation, and telling them the way you pulled everyone together beforehand, made sure every voice was heard, and then held the room during questions. I saw your includer and your relator shining through, doing what you do best, and it made a significant difference for our team. That second version tells someone that they're truly seen, not just for what they did, but for who they are, for the impact that they made. That's what builds loyalty, belonging, culture. So I encourage you to build strengths-based recognition into your formal programs, your manager toolkit, your everyday culture. Make it part of your on-the-spot recognition, your informal recognition, your peer-to-peer recognition. Truly weave it into all of it and make appreciation personal. Different people receive recognition differently, and a strengths-based lens helps you uncover that and understand how people want to be recognized. It helps you ask the right questions to get appreciation and recognition. Okay, so finally, one last quick beat before we wrap. It's your external presence. Your website, your employer brand, even your hiring language, does it reflect the strengths-based culture you're building on the inside? And people who leave your organization, are they ambassadors? Do they walk out and still share what you built? Do they still share their strengths? Because they should. And if you have boards, if you have partners or sponsors, external associates, alumni, the external community, they should be telling your story. Do they understand the strengths-based lens of your organization? Don't let the story live in the walls of your teams. Strengths are meant to be shared. So here's where I want to land today. The workshop is not the end. That is your spark, and it is our job to not let that spark go out. When strengths is woven into leadership, onboarding, team building, the way you run meetings and operate, the way you develop and coach, as well as how you plan and celebrate and share, it stops being a program. It becomes a culture. It becomes how your organization breathes. And this is when strengths truly sticks. So I don't want you to walk away from this episode feeling overwhelmed by all these areas. Therefore, go through the worksheet. Think about, where are we doing this fully integrated? Where are we not? Where do we have opportunity? Then look at those areas. Choose one where you're doing great and circle it. Share it. Tell people about what you're doing great. Then look at it and identify, okay, where's our biggest gap? Where is one spot, if strengthened, it would have the greatest ripple effect for us? And start there. You don't have to do everything. Remember, start small. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this helps you find your place to start integrating the strengths-based approach into your culture. And I look forward to seeing you next week in the lab.